Hey everyone, Editing Trent here. In this video, Jared and I go over Jeskai midrange in a lot of different ways. We go over the basics as well as some more specific card choices and ways that we think that you can attack the deck if you're looking to beat it at your local game store or in a bigger tournament, etc. Because this video is a little bit longer, if you are not interested in, say, watching a deck tech on Jeskai because you're already someone who is intimately familiar with the archetype, etc., I'll make sure to link down below the different sections of the video so that you can skip if you need to. I still think we have a lot of good stuff to say in all of the sections of the video, but if you are a more enfranchised player and you don't really want to watch a Jeskai deck tech again, then look below. Hello and welcome back to LJT MTG. We've got another fun video for you today. Jared and I are going to be looking at Jeskai midrange, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a deeper dive into the boogeyman of the format. And I think you'll see that as we talk about this deck, much like the real boogeyman isn't real, we also think that Jeskai being the boogeyman of this format might not be as real as people think. And we think there are some ways that you can definitely combat Jeskai if it is terrorizing your dreams and your nightmares and your local game store. So we're gonna get right into it. In a nutshell, this is Jeskai. We've got it up on the screen here on Moxfield. Jeskai is a 3-color mid-range deck using blue, white, and red cards. It plays a suite of a couple of planeswalkers, some creatures, and then a lot of a mixture of permission and removal spells, things that help the deck control the game state. When people talk about Jeskai, they call it a mid-range deck. I even have it labeled as such up here. You can't see it because the lovely Jeremy is in the way, but the reason that people will call it a control deck a lot of the time is because this is kind of what control decks look like in this format nowadays. You aren't winning with Consecrated Sphinx, I think, was the card that you were saying just before we started loading up, Jer. Yeah, you're not winning with Consecrated Sphinx or Torrential Gearhulk these days. Your threats have to be more efficient. You're going to play more games where you have less mana and resources to work with, so playing things that go way over the top, like those types of haymakers, just isn't really where you want to be. So like when we look at things like this creature suite, and we just lost Jer, here you're back. When we look at things like this creature suite, you'll notice that we just aren't playing anything beyond a single 4-drop, really, or a couple 4-drops. And you're mostly trying to win the game with whatever you have left over after you have cast a bunch of cantrips, removal, card draw spells like Expressive Iteration, a couple of Wrath of God effects like Terminus, Wrath of the Skies, and then we have a good suite of counter magic, the best removal in each color. So we've got, Lightning Bolt, Galvanic Discharge, Swords of Plowshares, Path to Exile, fantastic removal spell in this deck.
Much just in general, some would say.
I would say Path is one of the best removal spells in the format. I think some people.
No arguments here.
Yeah. And then to round it out, we're just playing a couple of I'm playing one piece of Graveyard Hate right now in the Ghost Vacuum and Dress Down, and then we're just playing 35 lands. This deck's great at leveraging the Surveil lands, as well as things like Library of Alexandria. And then the rest, you're a great Mystic Sanctuary deck. But yeah, that's just the basics of Jeskai.
What are the points in the deck?
The points in the deck are Ancestral Recall, Dig Through Time, and Mystical Tutor is what I'm playing. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but some people are playing other points, but we will get into that later in the video. Key cards in the deck are Ancestral Recall. Like, a big reason to play this deck is the recall. And that's why you're willing to spend 8 points on it. And that's why the pointing of Merchant Scroll was definitely a detriment to this archetype, because games where you have Ancestral Recall in the flow of the game change the texture of how you and your opponent get to play that particular game of Magic. with things like the Mystic Sanctuary, as I was showing earlier. But also,
Dreadhorde Arcanist, Snapcaster Mage.
exactly, just ways to flash it back. As well as, like, I mean, obviously, if you've recalled in a game, you've drawn 3 cards, so so there's that your opponent has to contend with as well. So yeah, recall really important in the deck. I'd also say a lot of the important cards in the deck are actually the counter spells that you play. Like, you do get this suite of like the best counter magic that Magic has to offer, and a lot of the ways that you beat decks that are looking to get out faster than you in terms of mana development and land like bigger threats and bigger creatures, etc., is by leveraging counter spells to gain mana advantage in those trades, but also with free magic like Force of Will and Force of Negation. That's also why we're playing Daze and Mental Misstep. Those types of interactions are really beneficial for Jeskai because you're not playing any mana acceleration. There's no Moxen. There's no other mana acceleration that I can think of that you would even really want to play. And so you need free spells to help you trade up in mana and to help you leverage the cards that you draw off of your Ancestral Recall. So that we also see we're playing Solitude and Fury for that reason. Not only are these cards really good, but
and Subtlety.
Oh, and we're playing Subtlety. Yeah, like we're playing the 3 Evoke Elementals because they cost 0 mana. Even if they're card disadvantage, we can offset that disadvantage in a lot of games by adding Recall into the mix of the game in general.
What do you think about these new blue threats? Like, how key is Murktide Regent, Abhorrent Oculus, Tamiyo to this deck?
They're really good. The thing with these new blue threats is that they allow you to turn the corner and end the game quickly when you have ascertained a certain amount of control in a matchup. So, because we aren't playing 60 card format, when you attain control in Highlander, it kind of means something different than when a control deck in a 60 card format does. A lot of the time in Highlander, when you ascertain control of a given board state, you basically are advantaged in that board state, and you have a couple of follow-up plays that could potentially be relevant and maintain your advantage through that board state in a lot of different scenarios. Like, they're very wide in what they cover. So an example I would give is, like, let's say you're ahead on board and you have a Swords to Plowshares in hand and a counter spell. Like, you're probably pretty advantaged in that board state, but it's still important for you to turn the corner quickly because decks are so threat dense these days, and every single card that an opponent can play does have the potential to win the game on its own a lot of the time. You really want to turn the corner quickly. So things like Murktide Regent and Abhorrent Oculus are really good in those roles because you can do a bunch of trading with your opponent in terms of early resources, maybe gain a little card advantage with something like Stock Up or obviously Ancestral Recall, but like, yeah, Stock Up or Flame of Anor, just another draw too. And then you can play a threat that's hard to remove, counter their removal spell, or remove their blocker, and turn the corner as fast as possible. So I think that's one of the strengths of Jeskai, is that you're able to turn the corner, and it doesn't just come from the blue threats either. Like threats like Pyrogoyf, Flage, even Dragon's Rage Channeler and Dreadhorde Arcanist can turn the corner really, really fast. Same with Aragorn. So you'll notice that the threats that we're playing are threats that can either theoretically win the game really fast or in a pretty fast time frame, or they're like really flexible threats, or they're just too efficient on rate. So like a Johnny is kind of weird in this deck because like you're not actually playing that many red permanents. So even if you flip a Johnny, you're not really like using it to its full potential. But the rate on a Johnny is so good that you basically just have to play it. Like it's just too good, and it's specifically a 2-drop threat. So in matchups where you aren't necessarily favored and you need to get on board early, things like the combo matchups, a Johnny is really good in those situations because it just gives you 3 power for 2 mana. And Ragavan is the same. Like, Ragavan isn't necessarily a control card, but the rate is just too good. So I think you basically have to play it.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I don't think Oculus or Murktide are necessarily too good. Oculus is definitely a card that we're looking out for, and Liam and I actually mentioned it in the one of the previous videos we did about which cards are the closest to being pointed. And we added Oculus into that list. That doesn't necessarily mean we believe it should be pointed, but we added it because it is pretty overwhelming. Like when you play an Oculus, the fact that it's 3 mana, meaning that like there are play patterns where you get to play Oculus and hold up a counterspell, or if you play Oculus and you're holding up a free counterspell like a Force of Negation or a Force of Will, that can be a really, really hard play pattern to beat from a lot of opponents. Um, so yeah, like I think these cards have changed the nature of this deck quite a lot. Before, Jeskai was a little pressed to play like things like Mantis Rider or Lightning Angel, like threats that also help them block and still gain board position. And I just don't really think you need to go there anymore. Those cards are sweet. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm a big Mantis Rider fan, but but I think
I
it's.
won what still to this day might be the biggest Highlander tournament ever with both of those cards in my deck.
I mean, Lightning Mantis Rider's sweet, but Lightning Angel's even sweeter. And
I
when
had
you
an RK post altered Lightning Angel.
oof, and when you get him with the 1-2 punch, I mean, there's nothing better. Nothing better. Um,
One other card I wanted to single out. That's another new addition that's sparked controversy in different formats. Is Invert Polarity. What's been your experience with that card?
um, I think Invert Polarity is really strong, but it definitely has its moments of weakness in ways that the more efficient counter magic don't.
Yeah, because
And
like
sorry, go
three
ahead.
three mana counter spells don't often see a lot of play. It's basically just invert polarity and sometimes 3 steps ahead from what I've seen for the most part. But like in case you didn't know, invert polarity's been banned in dual commander, maybe CEDH, one of the
Interesting.
two.
I
One of
didn't
the
know.
two.
I didn't know that.
It's
But
banned in one of the commanders.
um,
I think dual commander.
yeah. So from my perspective, I've liked Invert Polarity a lot, and I do want to play it, but it definitely has weaknesses, and the reason I'm playing it is because of what I said earlier, where most threats nowadays have like a potential to win the game, um, especially in mid-range mirrors specifically. So invert polarity can be a really, really big swing, um, because not only are you countering like their spell, but you're also gaining the mana and from that spell to like cast it, right, quote unquote. uh it does have weird like side problems, like invert polaritying their blood moon is really awkward because you actually want to lose the flip, because if you win the flip you don't want a blood moon in play regardless. um so like there's some of that to be had. Like price of progress is another great example. Like
Or like if you have a board and they cast a wrath, like
yeah, then you don't
you,
want to win. Yeah.
yeah, you want to counter it. You don't want to gain control of it. But
So it's definitely not perfect, but I think it definitely it deserves the slot. It can be a little hard to cast sometimes. So when I'm fetching for my early mana, Invert Polarity has actually changed the way that I fetch, even if I don't have it in hand, because I want to be able to cast it. So if I have the ability to fetch where I have double blue and a red, I'll do that, even if it means like
I mean, you're trying to get double blue pretty quickly
yeah,
anyway,
like
so
I have had it be mana awkward in certain spots. Sometimes you have hands where you like have a bunch of blue and white, but
when
you
you
only
do
have
have a
one
bunch
red.
of you do
Um,
have like Igancho, Plains, Caracas, Library, like you do have a bunch of lands that don't
Wasteland, much to your chagrin. Uh, but yeah, so the
not
mana
in my
definitely isn't
version.
the mana definitely isn't perfect. But I've really liked the invert polarity. Another card I'd like to point out is Ghost Vacuum. Um, I have actually been pretty impressed with this card. I haven't been like sorry, I've been impressed in terms of like I thought it was way worse than it actually has been, and I have liked having access to this effect. Um, the only issue I find with the card, from my perspective, is, uh, and we'll talk about this in a second, but like you don't always hit 6 mana on Jeskai. Like oftentimes you need to try and win the game with 4 or 5 mana, and playing a card that just says 1 mana exile target card from a graveyard isn't necessarily where you want to be if you're in a lot of game states where you like, yeah, sure, exiling their stuff is nice, but if you're playing just a regular mid-range mirror, like, yes, you might be shutting off their reanimates, but sometimes they draw hands that where this like doesn't do anything. Um, and paying 6 mana to get a bunch of 1/1 spirits can be really, really powerful and relevant, but this deck doesn't really use those spirits in a way that is game ending from what I've seen. Like, I'd say generally, if I'm cracking Vacuum for 6, I'm either like doing that because I'm getting a powerful effect from one of the spirits that I'm getting, or I just have extra mana, or I'm already winning the game and I'm just cracking it because I like am able to crack it and hold up counter spells or whatever, right? So, um,
Yeah.
I think I'm still happy enough with it in the slot. I think a big weakness that Jeskai has, that again we'll get to in a little bit, is graveyard interaction. Like Jeskai leans really, really heavily on its counter spells to fight against graveyard interaction decks, and Ghost Vacuum is a card that like can fill this like sort of Relic of Progenitus, Nihil Spellbomb slot that you might want, Soul Guide Lantern, etc. Um, I don't think there are any other like really notable cards I want to talk about. I don't know if you have anything that you want
No,
to
I
discuss.
called out the ones I wanted.
Fair enough. Uh, so the nice thing about Jeskai is, uh, it's really flexible in its card choices. So, like Jared was just saying, you wouldn't find Wasteland in his list. um, you'll find it in mine because we have different viewpoints of kind of what we're looking to do with the deck. But overall, like you can play a lot of different cards in Jeskai specifically and still have the core of the deck be pretty strong. Like there are a lot of people that aren't playing Aragorn King of Gondor. There are a lot of people that aren't playing Dragon's Rage Channeler. Some people lean heavier towards control, so they're playing like more controlling elements of the deck. Like maybe they're playing more counter spells like Stern Scolding, more 2 mana counters, etc. Uh, there are some people that are playing even different point spreads entirely. Um, so some people have been successful with like triple mux Jeskai decks, and those decks are, I'd say, are pretty different in how they
Yeah.
play. But like generally, if you're looking at the control builds, even like the threats that you can play can differ based on the pilot of the archetype. So yeah, I don't know. Like, do you have anything you want to say in that regard, Jared, in terms of the flexibility of Jeskai?
No, just that I think that's what makes it one of the better decks. So one of the things we haven't talked about explicitly is like how Jeskai cards interact with each other. And counter spells are really powerful, and one of the reasons they're really powerful is by and large they're ubiquitous answers. Like it doesn't matter if your opponent's on spell-based combo or like a creature deck. Most counter spells, like obviously Spell Pierce and Stern Scolding, are examples that aren't flexible along those lines, but most of them answer Questing Beast just as well as they answer Tinker. Like if you can cast it, it counters everything equally. Um, and that's one of the ways Jeskai gets to have like a very flat matchup spread. And that's one of the reasons it's a really attractive deck for people to play, and one of the reasons it's the most played deck. I think I'm correct in saying that. If it's not the most played, it's one of the most played, and I'm sort of lumping all the Jeskai variants together because they all play very similarly. But yeah, just the flexibility is at its base largely because of the blue cards. Like you get to see a lot more cards than most other decks because you get to cantrip and cast Ancestral Recall. So just on average, you're seeing more of your deck than other decks.
Yeah.
And you have your answer, like a large proportion of your answers are ubiquitous answers. So it doesn't, you just gain so much consistency, whereas like a deck we've both played as Rakdos, and like there are some matchups where you really want to see hand attack, and there's other matchups where you really want to see like fatal push.
Yeah.
And the way the matchup goes depends on if you happen to draw the right answer at the right time. But one of the advantages of blue decks is, as long as you don't get like absolutely ran over and get to set up, and the cheap removal spells really help with this. But if you get to set up behind counter spells, it doesn't matter what your opponent's doing. Like you get to stop them from what they're doing, as long as you deem it's relevant enough to spend your mana on and the card.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Since you're playing the best removal in the format, or some of the best removal, you also get to like pick and choose in a lot of spots whether or not you counter something based on the removal in your hand. And so like I talk about this endlessly on the channel. And if there's one thing that I ever get through anyone's head about this format, it's that uh, the cards have really high variable rate based on the game that you're playing in the moment. And counter spells are particularly good at letting you judge what you feel is important in the moment. And backed up with some of the best removal that the format offers, that gives you just more options when it comes to like how you feel like the game is progressing, and whether or not you feel like something is a threat that you can deal with, either with some of the creatures that you have access to, or the removal, or if you feel like you actually need to counter that spell. And to your point as well, like if you don't get run over, Jeskai is a deck that's playing a lot to the average game that you play in Highlander. Sort of quick analogous example of like a game that I had recently. I was playing Scapeshift, which has some analogs to Jeskai in terms of like a lot of the removal and the counters, etc. And my opponent went Tolarian Academy, Mana Crypt, 0 mana artifact, 0 mana artifact, play a Batterskull, pass. And like counter spells are never going to save you in those situations, but that is not the average. Like that is a higher roll type hand, right? So, and that's why things like Mana Crypt are so powerful, because they get under all of like not only every counter spell, but they also give you so much mana advantage, etc. You will, if you play Jeskai, you're just going to lose some matches to that type of stuff. Like, and that's what you have to tell yourself when you're going into those into games in general. Like, I'm playing to the average, and that actually informs the types of hands that I keep with Jeskai as well. And we've talked before about how you and I, generally speaking, we feel like we mulligan a little less aggressively than your average Canadian Highlander player. And Jeskai is a big part of that.
Game
like,
one especially.
Yes, of course.
I think we both agree that games 2 and 3 we're more aggressive than we are in game ones. But
contextually,
check out our mulligan video.
We'll link it in the description. But yeah, so Jeskai, like generally speaking, I'm looking for excuses not to mulligan. Like I really don't want to mulligan my first hand, especially in the dark, if I can help it. And Jeskai's really good at that. Like because the removal suite along with counter spells give you like flexible game plans against most opponents. Because you're a control deck, you're not really looking to win the game in any particular fashion, which is why like we are playing enough of a creature suite that we can win the game with these threats, but they aren't really like, they do sometimes work together, but not really. You know what I mean? Like they're just kind of individually powerful cards. Because a lot of the games with Jeskai, you play, you're interacting with your opponent, you're doing a back and forth, you're gaining some card advantage on the way, and then you kind of win with whatever's left, like whatever you've found along the way. And so the range of hands that you get to keep with Jeskai is also pretty wide, because generally speaking, you're mostly looking for hands that essentially have some early pieces of interaction. And that's like kind of your base level prerequisite. Whereas if you're playing decks like, say, mono red aggro or red green aggro, like you need hands that play to the board really early.
1 drop, 2 drop.
Yeah, exactly.
Or fast mana, 2 drop, 3 drop. Like
and so you have to mulligan more aggressively, or you'll find hands that aren't keepable more often
When
because
also
uh,
Jeskai is rarely the aggressor in
mhm.
any matchup. Like against combo, you're looking to stop what they're doing, and against most other, especially non-blue mid-range decks, you're happy for the game to go to turn 20. Chances are you're winning that game. Um, and against aggressive decks, especially, you're like the onus is not on you to push the tempo of the game and to present threats. Like you're very happy to not play a threat until turn 5, 6, whenever. Like you're very happy to trade one for one basically as long as possible.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention as well is um, the because the threats are so much better than they used to be, that actually lets Jeskai win games on lower mana sources as well. Um, and that's really, really relevant from a gameplay perspective because when you are casting things like Consecrated Sphinx, Torrential Gearhulk, 5 mana Teferi, you need to have like some amount of card draw, land searching in your deck to sort of meet the prerequisites to consistently cast those cards when you need them.
Or just play a ton more lands. Like I used to play like 40 lands in my control decks, and I would play like Tithe and like more card draw just because I like control decks used to play like See Beyond, Latinam's Legacy, Impulse, because like you needed to spend your first two turns being like you would go like preordain. Okay, found my third land. Then you would draw for the turn. If it's not your fourth land, like maybe you need to impulse to find your fourth land because you need to hit lands 5 and 6 eventually. So like,
Hmm.
but now you're like fourth land perfect. Like I'll happily go my next 2 turns without drawing a land. That's fine.
Yeah, like I've won a lot of games with Jeskai on. I'm stuck on 3 mana for a while, but I'm still interacting. I'm still making really relevant game decisions. And then I hit my fourth land and I just start popping off because I'm able to cast like a Murktide for 2 mana, or even I just cast an Ajani encounter the next spell and start like getting in. So yeah, that's something I forgot to mention earlier when you were asking me about these like Murktide, Oculus, Tameo threats
Hmm.
is because the threats are lower costed. It means that you get to play the games in different ways, in like from traditional control decks, which is why I still call this deck Jeskai mid range because even though it feels like a control deck in the actual current format, it like to me it sort of still looks like a mid range deck. um, it because it definitely isn't pure control. I'd say it's sort of in between mid range and control.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. Mid range, the amorphous mid range blob is us sucking in everything in its path. So
uh,
far, aggro control combo. You're next.
yeah, we're waiting for the combo blob to happen. Uh, um,
Did you
okay,
want to talk about? Sorry,
no,
you
you
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you want to talk about dig through time versus fourth? So there's two. There's one main difference between Trent's list and what I would quote unquote say the stock uh Jeskai list is, and that's actually in a pretty big decision. It's a pointed card. Um, and I mean, I guess there are other differences. They're just less obvious because they're probably less meaningful. Um, Trent opts to play Dig Through Time, which is a really, really powerful card selection spell. Uh, and I would say the majority of other Jeskai pilots I've seen, including myself, play fourth Eorlingas instead, which is a really, really powerful win condition.
Yeah, so the differences between Dig Through Time and Fourth Aerolingus to me are pretty clear. Um, if people are playing Fourth Aerolingus, they want an extra piece of cardboard that wins them the game that has a certain level of flexibility and gives them a better, quote unquote, better inevitable plan in a later game, right? Like if you're playing a late game and your opponent isn't up to much and you have 7 lands in play and you draw a Mystical Tutor, mystical tutoring for fourth Aer Lingus makes a lot of sense, right? Make 5/2/2s, start attacking. Maybe you don't win the game that turn, but with that much material, you're generally speaking going to win the game pretty fast. You get in the Monarch, which if you get the Monarch in Jeskai and then you get to untap with it and they haven't threatened it in any meaningful way, a lot of the time that can be really backbreaking for your opponent and can be really hard to get out from, because Jeskai has some of the best 1-for-1 transactional cards. So if you are gaining an extra card a turn, like you can just bury your opponent in card advantage while also like potentially developing threats and board states, etc. So the reason that I play Dig Through Time over Fourth Eorlingas, which is a card that is generally speaking just one of the best card selection cards, right? So it does, Dig Through Time doesn't outright win me the game as much as say a Fourth Eorlingas might. But the reason I'm playing Dig is because I think the first reason is that I do not expect to always hit my 5th land drop in this deck, my 5th or 6th land drop. And I think Fourth Eorlingas is at its best when you are consistently able to cast it for like a pretty sizable chunk of mana. And I also think that this deck, at least in the way that I'm playing it, generally I'm happy to win with whatever I have left over. I think I mentioned this earlier. So what I'm looking to do is in the beginning stages of the game, I'm looking to do my best to find an Ancestral Recall because I want that in my game at some point. And I'm looking to trade with my opponent in trades that are ideally mana advantageous to me. But I'm also just trying to stay alive, continue to hit land drops, reach enough land drops that I feel comfortable being able to cast threats and also interact, and then go from there. The thing about Dig Through Time is that it is, like, in my experience, Dig Through Time is good in all types of games that I play, whereas Fourth Eorlingas is good in, like, is more specific. So if I'm playing against someone who is putting the pressure on, I think Fourth Eorlingas is a lot worse in that scenario, because oftentimes what happens is I will be trading back and forth, and let's say someone is really good at putting the pressure on, like they're playing Rakdos, for example, and they like Thoughtseize away one of my key answers in the beginning. They land a Douthly Voidwalker, so like recalling is kind of out of the question. They are continuing to apply pressure, but I'm able to like get to the point where I get enough 1-for-1 trades, and their deck doesn't like have as much card filtering or card selection, so maybe they start drawing a little bit of air, and that gives me a little bit of breathing room. But I'm still on like 4 mana, right? Like all of that could happen in the first 4 turns. But if they still have like a reasonable enough board state, Fourth Eorlingas can be really scary to introduce into the game as well. One card that people have been talking about a lot is White Plume Adventurer, and how Jeskai used to play White Plume, and now it doesn't because White Plume is a point. The thing about White Plume is like the rate is so good on White Plume that you played it because it's just so overwhelming in terms of how good the rate is. But I don't even know if that was necessarily correct when people were doing it. Introducing things like the Initiative and the Monarch to the game for Jeskai can be really challenging. Like if we look at the creature suite that Jeskai's playing, except for like Aragorn and a couple of your flyers, like you're not actually really that great at taking Pyroglyph. Like yes, but you only have 16 creatures. And so like you do have
a bunch of them are like half a creature, like Tameo, half a creature, Spellseeker, a quarter of a creature.
Yeah, like these aren't taking back the initiative. Like elementals.
These elementals are basically spells. Snapcaster, half a creature.
Dragon's Rage, like half a creature, like some percentage of the time. Like, so really you have like maybe what, 6 threats, 7 threats that are maybe good enough to take back the initiative or the Monarch.
Sure.
So when it comes to Dig Through Time versus Fourth Eorlingas, Dig helps me find whatever I'm looking for to bridge myself from the mid game into a later game. And I'm playing a low threat count. I think Dig itself is like a percentage of a threat, because when I cast Dig Through Time, if I'm looking at 7 cards, it's very likely that I'm going to be able to find some sort of threat or find some way to get to a threat. And Fourth Eorlingas to me, like, I think a lot of the benefit that you get from playing fourth Eorlingas is uh timing considerations. Like you can kill your opponents a lot faster if you have fourth Eorlingas in your deck. So like for example, with this version of Jeskai, like when I'm playing in person, I have to play really fast when I'm playing this deck. Like maybe faster than most people would be comfortable with. Because the mechanics of shuffling in this format with end step fetching for surveil lands, etc., like that stuff takes a lot of time, especially giving yourself the grace to like still play Magic, like still think about like things, still think about whether or not you want to counter some potentially critical threat that your opponent presents, and so like playing fourth Aerolingus is a good consideration if you feel like you need to close games out faster, like maybe you feel like you need it um to like make sure that you're essentially like closing the game out before the 50 minutes on the clock run out. But from my perspective, like I think Dig Through Time is a better card when it comes to helping you win games where you are playing lower resource games in terms of your mana. Um, and it's also still really, really, really good when you're playing high resource games. For example, if I have 8 lands in play, Fourth Erlingus is obviously excellent, but so is Dig Through Time. Like if I draw Dig Through Time and I have 8 mana in play, and I cast a 2 mana Dig Through Time, like I feel like I'm winning the game, right? A large percentage of the time. So that's why I've made the consideration to play Dig over Fourth Erlingus. I think Dig helps me in spots where I don't know if I necessarily need help closing the game, and I think that's what fourth offers you, is like the one of the best ways to close the game. I'm not saying that fourth isn't good. Like if fourth was 0 points, I would be playing it 1,000% not close. It's really, really good. And I don't know if I could necessarily fault people for playing fourth Aerolingus over Dig Through Time. Like I think there are potential reasons to do that. I think if you're in a maybe if you're in like a combo heavy meta and you want like some more threats that also like give you draws to get to the point where you can establish a bunch of counter magic that helps you through that like potential combo turn, like then maybe you're supposed to be playing fourth Aerolingus. But yeah, to me, I've just really, really appreciated having the Dig Through Time.
So one of the reasons biggest reasons I play fourth over Dig, and also why I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of the, maybe not a lot, but some of the Jeskai pilots have been cutting Spellseeker. I know I told you this recently and you were surprised, is that I think fourth makes both your Mystical Tutor and Spellseeker like so much better, being able to get like really impactful threat like directly. Like
Yeah.
obviously when you're miscaling, you're still getting recall a pretty high percentage of the time, same with Spellseeker. But I think having fourth in your deck and giving you an avenue to win the game instead of just drawing 3 cards, I know it's a meme, like y- the Uno meme, like
You like, would I rather
Jeskai
draw
players
8 or
win the game or cast recall 4 times. Like, yeah, they're casting recall 4 times every time. But the fourth year Lingus gamers at least have the option to a more direct route to win the game. I also think you might be discounting how good early fourth can be. There are definitely times where it's awkward, and especially if you're behind, it can certainly be a liability. So can Dig. Like you mentioned, if they have a Dothy Voidwalker out, like if your opponent has a Dothy Voidwalker, you're probably not casting Dig very early that game.
sure.
Um, just as an
Yeah, of course.
example.
Yeah.
Um, and so like Dig has its downsides as well. Like if you're getting beat down, Dig is not usually the first card you want to see. Its floor is probably higher than fourth year Lingus, I will agree. But one option that was pointed out to me, and it hasn't come up for me yet, is that you can also just cast fourth and not attack, so you don't introduce the Monarch if you think it's bad for you. Like you can just make a bunch of dinguses.
Yeah, yeah.
That is a mode. Obviously, you hope not to use that mode, but it is a mode. So yeah, that's that's my consideration when I have chosen fourth over Dig. Some people say the graveyard is too taxed. I don't think that's true. You have Oculus, Murktide, and Flage. That's basically it.
Yeah, I mean
That's not a
it's not
lot.
zero, like it's not a zero
Like, yeah,
percenter, but
sometimes you'll draw two like delve cards in the same game and it'll be awkward. But I've also drawn two delve cards in the same game, playing the three of them, and it's also been fine. Like, Jeskai is not a deck that like needs to cast every threat on curve turn after turn. So
yeah, I agree. And I will say, like, there is something to be said about playing Spellseeker and getting fourth. Like, that's actually a pretty, because especially if you've already recalled in the game, then like casting Spellseeker and getting, you know, Swords to Plowshares or
counterspell,
Counterspell or
sword,
whatever,
yeah.
like that's definitely less powerful.
That's something else that I didn't mention is like it makes Mystical and Spellseeker after recall is gone like infinitely better than your version, and sometimes fourth is better than recall.
Yep, no, I definitely agree with that. I guess from my perspective, like I do think fourth is at its most powerful when you have a bunch of mana in play. And I think the because I can cast dig when I have 4 lands in play and still have it be like really relevant and really matter a lot versus like I don't know, like I think I'm pretty unhappy most of the time if I'm casting fourth for 1 or fourth for 2. I think I want to be casting fourth for 3 or more usually. I mean it's obviously situation
Depends on the
dependent.
context.
Yeah. But
Like if you're on the play against combo, fourth for one is like
yes,
maybe
that is a big
the best play in the deck.
and
Like
that's what I was
if it's in
mentioning
your deck.
earlier, where like if your metagame is like more combo heavy, like you probably want to be playing fourth, even though Dig is still good against combo because it can help you find like more combo specific hate like these free counter spells. But I still think you probably want to play fourth over Dig because you are threat light in that matchup. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It just feels to me like okay, if I'm playing a game with Jeskai and it's a slog and there's a lot of back and forth in the first like 3 or 4 turns of the game, like if I don't have a bunch of mana by that time, like let's say I have 3 lands, but we've been slogging back and forth so my graveyard is full, like I almost think I'd almost always rather have dig through time in that scenario than fourth Eorlingas.
I
And
mean,
I
it depends what's on board. Like if you were on the play and you've been able to one for one them, like you kill their 1-drop on turn 2, you kill their 2-drop on turn 3, or like even better, they don't have a 1-drop. On your turn 2, you like bolt their thing. On your turn 3, you swords their thing. The board is clear, and then you untap on turn 4 and have fourth for 2. Like that's also unreal. Like your opponent's like groaning and slumping, and like they're like,
yeah,
ugh.
I guess like from my perspective
But
like
I agree,
those
it
types
is
of
mostly
mhm.
good when you're parity or ahead. Like if you're behind, dig is definitely better when you're behind. It's like less of a liability. I fully agree. There are some people who like have been campaigning for fourth to 2 and like fourth is too good, and I'm certainly not in that camp.
Mhm.
But
I guess where I'm at is like, okay, so if we think dig is on average better when you're behind, I mean, fourth has its moments when you're behind and it just completely wins you the game, obviously. But um,
sure,
then, like, I think where I'm, like, based on my experience with Jeskai, there are the games where fourth you would go, like, kill your creature, fourth you for 2, like, I'm completely winning. There's, like, no way you could possibly beat me or what have you. But I just don't find those types of games happen that often, at least in my experience. And it's possible that this is a like YJ meta particular like viewpoint, right? Like at YJ, I'm being taxed quite heavily, and people are like playing more proactive creature decks more often, and so I'm probably looking at fourth Eorlingas in less of a positive light because I am behind more often than not, right? Whereas if I was playing a lot of say Jeskai mirrors or like these blue mid range mirrors, then it's quite possible I would want fourth Eorlingas, because it is like at that, in those mirrors specifically, it's also really good at anywhere from 2 mana to like 8 mana, right? Um, but yeah, I think I also just like think for the most part, if I'm winning a game on 4 mana, like if I'm stuck on 3 or 4 lands, I think dig in that game can help me win a, like can help me transition into a late game in a way that fourth really can't. Um, but I will say this, and this might invalidate a lot of my argument. I have played a decent amount of fourth, but I haven't played it like a lot, a lot. Um, I made the switch from fourth to dig through time pretty early on, um, mostly because of what I've been talking about in terms of wanting like an extra card that allowed me to like find more particular answers, was better in the early, or sorry, was better when I'm behind, etc. Um, but yeah, that's like the consideration I'm making. And I think one of the points that we wanted to make with this video was, um, you do have a lot of flexibility in terms of your card choices in Jeskai that go even beyond the pointed cards. But you do have flexibility in the pointed cards that you play. Um, Now, I think most people have decided that they want to play Mystical plus Terminus and Recall, because it's like
Terminus is cracked.
Terminus is really, really good. Um, but depending on, your local metagame, you could adjust that. Like Terminus isn't going to be good in every meta at
Yeah, like
large.
if Terminus
Like,
is not good, then I wouldn't play Mystical Tutor in this deck.
yeah, at that point, I think you're deciding if you want to play Merchant Scroll, or if you want to play um,
You could play fourth
Fourth
and dig.
Airlingus and Dig. Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the most interesting things about Jeskai is how flexible it is in terms of what you play. There is like there isn't really a stock list. Like a lot of us are playing very similar cards because they're just like very proven cards that are quite strong. But I mean, I could see metagames where I even cut like March of Otherworldly Light, Invert Polarity. Like I could see metagames where I 3 mana for a counterspell just isn't where I want to be. Maybe there are metagames where like I'm not really high on Spell Pierce, for example, or like maybe I need to add more 1 mana
Stifle.
removal. So yeah, maybe I cut Stifle. Maybe I'm playing like not just the Unholy Heap, but I'm also playing like the Torch the Tower, or whatever other 1 mana removal considerations we might have. Or maybe there are metagames where I know that I'm going to need to get rid of Planeswalkers because there's a lot of people playing those types of things. Or I want flexible removal, so I play something like Get Lost or Fateful Absence, right? That like are pretty notable exceptions from this list. So yeah, like I think the flexibility in Jeskai is pretty interesting, but the sort of base level of cards is really strong in your average game. Um, so then the question becomes, well, how do you beat the boogeyman, right? Like at the top of the video, we said, okay, well, this is the boogeyman of the format, but the boogeyman isn't real. And so is Jeskai real? Like, is Jeskai really the thing haunting your nightmares and your dreams? Um, I'm gonna flip it to you because I've been talking a lot. How do you think you're beating Jeskai, or when you play Jeskai, how do you feel like other people are beating you?
Um, so I played Jeskai for a long time, but it was back then it was built in a much more proactive manner, so it was a different deck. I've played it a bit since coming back, but not a lot, and not nearly as much as you. I've mostly been on the other side. And one of the things I think I am the best at in this format, or in Magic in general, but specifically in this format, is figuring out how to beat the best deck. Um,
I agree.
and there are several ways I think you can attack Jeskai. If you're interested in playing a different one of the best decks, I think Jeskai is unfavored into the 3 best fast combo decks. Those being Breach, Flash Hulk, and Turbo Citadel. Um, it has access to counter spells, but as you mentioned, the deck is generally fairly threat light, and those decks have the capability to go off under counter spells And also, if you give them time, will have such an unbeatable amount of disruption that they'll go like in one turn, like discard spells, silence you, then go off. And Jeskai just isn't beating that sequence of cards ever. Um, and so that is one route you can go. Another route is to go bigger, um, and especially with like a value angle. So the two decks that I have played that do this are like the Simic Law variants, where you're like a blue deck with some counter spells. You're kind of ramping. You have like so many ridiculous value engines like Sabsunin, Primordial Mist. Like, just guy can't ever beat either of those cards. Um, I mean, it's mostly true.
No, I
Uh,
agree.
Scape Shift is the other one. I think Scape Shift is pretty favored into Jeskai. As you mentioned, you're playing mostly a similar game. Jeskai or Escape Shift sacrifices some of the interaction, like the worst interaction spells, for access to a couple of combos and mana ramp. So Escape Shift is likely going to have a mana advantage, has some of the same value engines apart from recall, but is so threatening. Like, it's so hard for Jeskai to tap even low in the late game, because like you're threatening to Seeker Walk, you're threatening uh to just cast Scape Shift, you're threatening to like fourth Eorlingas for 14. Like, yeah, you're
uh,
just going way over the top. Um, and then the other way you can attack Jeskai is not on a deck axis, but on a card axis, and that is by sacrificing some of the cards you have in your deck for other matchups. Cards like Clarion Conqueror, Collector Oof, the cards like your silver bullets for combo or other matchups. There are silver bullets that beat Jeskai, like even older cards, but you're generally looking for cards that are 2-for-1 or cards that specifically attack and limit Jeskai's options. So cards like Voice of Resurgence is a classic anti-blue control card.
card
Um,
is really good against this deck.
yeah, and so it's really hard for them to beat. It forces them to tap out on their turn, likely leaves you with an additional threat that's very threatening. Like, the voice token gets huge quickly. If they aren't able to deal with it, you just get to cast your spells with impunity because they come stapled to an amazing threat if they do counter it. Like, they're still 2-for-1ing themselves if they're countering your spells, and that's an amazing place to be. Um, so considering cards like that, putting more 2-for-1 cards in your deck, um, but especially cards that are 2-for-1s and threatening. I guess the biggest class of cards that fall into this category are Planeswalkers. And Planeswalkers are incredibly good against Jeskai, even the not like classically
They're really, really
powerful
hard to
ones.
beat.
Like,
Like Planeswalkers are
even
really good against this deck. Yeah.
even like the doofy Sorens, like, probably crush Jeskai. Like, if you're playing like a tokens deck and just put like take out some of your high end threats and put like 5 Planeswalkers in instead, like, cut your Aomir, cut whatever the hell else you're playing, put in like 2 Sorens, and Elspeth, and a Johnny, whatever the hell they do these days, and like that's probably gonna increase your Jeskai matchup. Just like things that make more rectangles stay around are threatening. Like, those are, I think, the best angles to attack Jeskai, because if you look at it, they're looking to 1-for-1 you. Like, that's what you mentioned several times, like, and then get ahead with their card advantage where they have some built-in 2-for-1s. But if
Yeah.
they're playing against a deck of 2-for-1s, like, so originally when Ben built Jeskai, which was like kind of more similar to this, I think he was playing Recall, but maybe he was still on Time Walk. We played Time Walk back in the day.
back in the day.
Um, he won three Monday nights in a row, and I stopped his four-peat with Aristocrats because Aristocrats is a deck that this deck struggles to beat because you just can't keep them off the board. Like literally every card in the deck just leaves behind rectangles, and there isn't a deck that makes like cards like Flame Slash, Lightning Bolt, Galvanic Iteration, I can go on and on, look more embarrassing than Aristocrats. Like you just have like so few good targets, and the deck has really powerful engines. Like you can also go really far into the synergy space to beat a deck like Jeskai because they're looking to interact um on a one for one basis. It depends on the deck, but
Yeah, it depends on
and
the
also
synergy,
like
but yeah.
yeah, like it is easier for them to beat those decks because those decks often rely on key cards, and Jeskai is often good at picking apart key cards. But like Aristocrats specifically is pretty good because their baseline cards line up pretty good into what Jeskai is trying to do. But yeah, those are generally my thoughts on how to beat Jeskai. Like fast combo, go over the top, think about your card choices. Like if you have Collector Roof and Clarion Conqueror in your deck and keep losing to Jeskai, consider not playing those ones.
Yeah, I think another thing I want to add to that, because I totally agree with everything you've said. So when I play Jeskai and I sit across from my opponent, and I think there is a certain like subset of people who might be looking at Jeskai because it's the boogeyman, and they're already defeated in their mind. Like I've already gotten there. I'm living rent free because I'm playing what's seen as like a deck that might be too good, or it might or it is again the boogeyman. And so, they might be playing differently, or maybe it's affecting them in ways that where they aren't necessarily playing optimally, or they've convinced themselves of like things that Jeskai like definitely does do but doesn't always do. So the clearest example I can give is a lot of the time when I'm playing Jeskai, I play a land, let's say turn 3 or turn 4, and I pass the turn, and I just don't have a counterspell in hand. Like the reason I played a land and passed the turn is because I'm gonna cast a removal spell like March of Otherworldly Light on whatever they play, or I'm going to cast a card draw spell like Brain Surge or Flame of Endor if there's nothing for me to kill. Maybe I'm full out tapping out for a dig through time for 4 mana, right? Um, or maybe like my counter spell is like, a reprieve or a remand, or maybe it's like soft permission, and I'm like holding up some combination of like soft permission and a stifle, or like some way to find recall like waterlog teachings. But I can't tell you how many times I've like played Jeskai, played my fourth land, passed, and my opponent just like doesn't develop with their best threat, or doesn't develop with anything that really matters. And at the end of the day, like there are a ton of spots for like looking at board state and deciding from your perspective, if you're playing against Jeskai, to go like, I'm not willing to lose this card to a counter spell at this stage. Like I think there's a better spot for this. But I think a lot of the time there are many spots where you should just play your card and just jam it.
And
Like,
play your most meaningful card.
yeah, like I can't tell you how many games I've lost on Jeskai to I played my fourth land and my opponent just slams Comet, and I just like don't have it, and then I lose because I can't beat a Comet because it's literally impossible to kill in this deck. um, so I think there's a lot of considerations there of like how much respect you give to like the certain pieces of Jeskai, and I think a lot of it also has to do with okay, let's say you have a threat in your hand that you're looking to play against Jeskai, and they have like some mana open. Again, it could be anything. Like they could just be waiting to plow whatever threat you play, right? Like they could be waiting to path it. They could be waiting to lightning bolt whatever your most relevant creature is. Maybe they take 2 from your random, shitter creature, whatever. That, but like they don't always have the 2 mana counter spell. I mean, they do a lot of the time, and I think there are again a lot of spots where it makes sense to play like your second most valuable threat or what have you. But there are a lot of situations where I think it's correct to jam, and I think a lot of that honestly comes down to both experience, but also just not getting yourself stun locked right at the beginning of the match. Like, if I open on land, crack fetch, get Thundering Falls, and then I like untap and recall myself after I've mulliganed or whatever, and I look over at my opponent and they're already lamenting that they're playing against Jeskai, I already feel like I've won. Like, I feel like I'm winning because I feel like they're going to respect a lot of the things that I don't have because they have such a like heightened, like almost over respect for what this deck does, like for what the archetype does. And the scariest people I play against are the people that just play like early interaction or early creatures and then they just start slamming and they're like, yeah, I mean, just have it, you have to have it. Like that, there's some, again, there's sometimes where that's not correct, but like I'd say for the most part, a lot of the times, like you should probably just be slamming, and it's contextual. It's obviously all of this is really contextual, but like there is a reason that at the beginning of the video I talked about these free spells a lot, like subtlety, solitude, fury, because I need answers to when people slam things and I don't actually have the counter spell, or I had to tap out for some other reason. Like there are some games where I have 2 mana and I tap out for like some sort of card draw spell, or 3 mana and I tap out for a card draw spell because I like need to start hitting my fourth and fifth land drop based on the context of the game. And like you just can't play around everything, right? Like sometimes you just got to go for it. So um yeah, I agree with everything you said, and also again I would add that caveat. Like if you feel like you're sitting across from Jeskai and you already feel defeated, it's because you are. It's because you've already decided that this deck is probably going to beat you, and that might not come out in the actual match. Like obviously we're still playing Magic, and like sometimes like they're not going to draw that well, and you're just going to crush them anyways. But like I think you're leaving a lot of equity on the table, and I think it's a similar feeling when like you play the best player at your store, and especially when you were like at least when I was a newer Magic player and I played the best player at my store, like I always played worse because I had
Totally.
already they were already in my head, and I think Jeskai is kind of the same way in a lot of in a lot of ways. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know if you remember, but one of the first games we played when we came back, it didn't end up getting on the channel. But I was playing Prowess and you were playing Jeskai, and you recalled twice in the same game and still comfortably lost that game.
yeah, it's because you didn't care. Because you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, he's recalling, and that's obviously bad for me, but like, I'm just gonna keep slamming, and you keep jamming cards, and that's like, okay, I'll counter this one, and then I didn't have the next counter spell, and I couldn't possibly beat you. Like it, I think I recalled 3 times that game, didn't I? Like I think I
Maybe it was
recalled
3. Yeah.
early twice, and then like later on when the game was like more lost, I had recalled again. But like
Hmm.
it like I can't tell you how many games I've lost even when I've recalled once or twice. Like those games are hard to lose. Like
And
you win
especially
a
if
lot of
they're
them, but
spending resources to get the recall and cast the recall, like they spent resources. Like a recall they just rip from their hand is scarier than a recall they have mystical tutored for or waterlog teachings for.
mm-hmm.
Like they've spent a card and mana to get the recall. Like it's still very powerful, but it's not like not all recalls are equal. And not all recalls draw them like counter spells, swords to plowshares, whatever threat they need at the time. Like that's also not how recall works.
Yeah,
Like how many
sometimes you
times have you
recall
ripped 3 lands off a recall? Like
uh basically every time I cast recall it feels like
sure, exactly. And like that happens. Like if they drew in the late game, if you're like both top decking and they recall and they draw 2 lands, they basically cantripped. Like obviously the lands aren't full blanks, but like they're not a full card, that's for sure. So like yeah, I find people play scared against Jeskai talking to people and also seeing like sort of conventional wisdom on the Discord server. People are scared of this deck and they do hold it in like such high regard that I fully believe that some people play suboptimally even if it's subconscious um because they assume their opponent just always has it and that's not how Magic or this deck work.
Yeah, and I think like if you want, like, let's say you feel like you might be that type of person and you want to tackle that, uh there's two ways I generally do this when I feel this as well, because like this does happen to me. Like recently on a Monday night, I was playing Scape Shift and I was 3-0, and I played for the 4-0 against Sasha, and Sasha was playing Breach Storm, which feels like an impossible matchup. And if I'm being honest, I felt defeated basically before we started playing the games. And it's quite possible I didn't play optimally based on that, even though like I do think that matchup is pretty low percentage for Scape Shift. Like there's still juice I could have squeezed out of it. So, two things that I do when I'm in that position. One, I play the deck that I'm scared of. If I have the ability to play the deck that I'm scared of, I do it. Recently, I played a stint of Boros Taxes. I played it like in 3 different Monday nights. And a big reason why I did that is because I needed to figure out what was happening on the other side. Um, Not that I'm not familiar with those archetypes, but you know, things change. Like taxes, a lot of people are playing depletion lands now. Like that archetype has sort of evolved and shifted and changed based on a lot of different things, you know, including like Modern Horizons sets of recent. And now when I play against white red, I have like this intrinsic knowledge of like what they're doing, what stages of the game feel like. Oh, they had 4 mana last turn, and this is how they played their turn. I can assume that they probably don't have these types of cards, right? And these are things that I find are really easy to do if you are actually playing the archetype. Um, and I think that that bears in the fact that like if you're a master of your archetype, you can tell people what you're scared of, and uh, like you know from experience. And so getting to the other side of the table, playing, sitting down and like let's say Jeskai's your boogeyman, getting in the shoes of the boogeyman and trying to figure out like how it works and like how people are winning with it and like how it feels to be on the other side when you play your fourth land and pass and someone doesn't like play into it because they're afraid of the counter spell. Like actually having those things happen to you, I think, is a really strong way to get to the point where when you're playing against that archetype with something else, like you can start to understand what's happening. And like I'll actually give an example that we have on the channel, and hopefully I'll remember to link this video in the description. But Liam and I were playing like a series of games. I think I was playing Esper Omnitel against a bunch of different decks, and Liam pulled out Jeskai. And there's a moment in that video where Liam passes the turn, and I'm talking out loud, and I put him on the Wandering Emperor. And Liam like is he literally goes like, What are you talking about? Like, how do you know?" And it's like, well, I've just played this deck enough. Like I assume like based on the context clues that have been happening, like the way the game's been happening, that you're probably on Wandering Emperor. Like that's probably the threat that you're gonna play. And then sure enough, he did have it. And so, and I think those types of things like really only come with experience in easy ways, right? Like obviously if you've been playing Magic for a while, you'll gain a lot of that for free just because of like your previous experience in general. But I really do think the best way to like figure out how to beat a deck is to play a deck, because then you understand what its weaknesses are. And then the
Totally
second
agree.
is to get reps against Jeskai and just to try things. Like I think if you get reps with against Jeskai, and let's say you and your buddy play 10 matches, I think if you go into that match and you say to yourself, I'm just going to cast spells. I'm just going to cast the best spell in my hand every time I have it available, and I'm going to see what happens. I think you're going to get over that like feeling of I don't want to overextend my best spell into a counter spell, and that might give you the context that you need to make those more important decisions when it really does matter when you're at like say your local Monday night event. You can only get that you can only really get that from experience, like knowing when to cast your like really impactful 4-drop into open mana versus not is such a like context driven like game that it matters based on the match you're having, the game state, like how many lands people have, etc. Like what they've been doing before you played your fourth land and potentially want to play this 4-drop. And I think just getting reps in against the deck as well is also a great way to learn, especially if you're looking at doing it from a particular archetype's viewpoint. And you can make changes in your deck to actually see if those changes help you in that matchup. So earlier you were talking about Voice of Resurgence, for example, right? Like, let's say you're playing some sort of like green mid-range deck, like green white X mid-range deck. If you want to test Jeskai and see if you can improve your deck in that matchup, you can't just like play one weekly with a couple of extra cards and decide that that's like how the matchup's going to go. Like, we just don't have enough data in this format to make those types of sweeping decisions. If you want to really figure out how to do something in a matchup, you have to actually just play a lot of games. Like, so sit down with your buddy, grab your Voice of Resurgence, your Questing Beasts, your Thrun the Last Trolls. I don't know if that one makes it anymore, but
Run Breaker of Silence.
Run Breaker
I think
of
that's
Silence.
the one. The 5-mana haste one. Or no, it doesn't have haste.
No, it's just, it has like uncounterable
But
trample, like can't be targeted
by non-green.
Yeah, impossible
Both
to kill. And actually play those games and see those cards in games where they come up naturally, and how powerful they are, and even talk with the person that you're playing with and say like, okay, when I played this, like how did it feel for you? Like, if you're looking to test out cards. Another card I'd be like, I think that would be perfect for is, let's say like if someone played Eska's Chariot against me, like, I actually don't know how I beat that card. Like, really,
I think that card is criminally underplayed.
Yeah, but you wouldn't like, I don't, like, you and I can theorize, but we don't actually know because we haven't really played Jeskai versus Eska's Chariot before, right? But like, we can theorize because of our experience. But yeah, if you really want those answers, like, you just got to sit down and play.
Yep.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to say about Jeskai before we go, Jer? I feel like we've talked for...
No, we've talked a lot about Jeskai. I feel like we've covered the bases, the outfield, home plate.
We'd love to... Okay, so we'd love to
Both
hear
dugouts.
from... We'd love to hear from you just about Jeskai in general. What do you think its strengths and weaknesses are? And maybe more specifically, like, how do you beat Jeskai? Like, how do you feel like you've beaten Jeskai in the past? What are the things that you do to combat the, like, so-called boogeyman of the format? And we'd love to talk to you about it in the comments, so comment down below. If you like the content that we've been producing, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We just hit over 1K, so thank you so much. We really love making content for everyone. Like, it's just been so fun. But yeah, we look forward to chatting with everyone, and we'll see you next time.